Turtle Tracks podcast. This is your host, Brian VanHooker, and I'm here with Andrew Farago, the author of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimate Visual History, which has a new revised and expanded edition coming out July 23rd, 2024. Andrew, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I gotta say, I was so surprised to hear that there's a new edition coming out. We'll get into it in a minute, but I mean, like, I have the original one, so tell me what is in this new one, because I've seen it, and there's a heck of a lot more stuff. So please, for those who already have the book, explain what else they're going to get with this one.
Yeah, I mean, not to be a jerk, but you do have to buy the new one. So,
I mean, that's what I basically wanted to say was there's a lot more stuff. Like if you have the old one, it's great, but like, oh man, there's a heck of a lot more in the new one.
yeah, if you are absolutely, totally 100% old school Turtles fan, if for you the moment Vanilla Ice came on screen in Secret of the Ooze was peak Turtles, and you're kind of done after that. You may not need the new one, but yeah, as we know, the past 10 years with Nickelodeon and Konami and IDW and all these amazing people involved with Turtles, um, there's been a lot of new amazing content over the last decade. So this is previous edition came out to coincide with the Turtles' 30th anniversary. This is a 40th anniversary celebration, and there's just been so much new content since then. And I got to go back and make a few adjustments and actually add to a few sections in the older content. So there's it's almost it's a bigger price tag, but it's almost twice as much book as the first one.
Yes, like over 300 pages. Is that what it is?
Yeah, so I think it's right around 330 pages. So we added a lot. The first one was under 200, so we really ramped it up this time around.
Were there any sections of the original one that you were like at the time, like, oh, I wish I got to go more into that or something like that?
Yeah, and that was the great thing about my editor for this go around was Sammy Holland. Original editor was Chris Prince, and first time around, it was my first time writing a book anything like this. This was actually, I think, the first Ultimate Visual History that Insight Editions did. So we were kind of inventing it as we went along, and that was my first go around. So I did not have all the resources, all the contacts that I might have wanted.
Hmm.
So that was not an issue this time around. It was easier. Yeah, it's strange to think of 2012, 2013 as being ancient history, but it really was in terms of having access to all the video content that I wanted, having the ability to track down all the comics that I wanted to read, getting in contact with all the people that might be able to help out with it. So, there were, complete seasons of TV cartoons that I was not able to watch, and
Oh wow.
there were comic books that I wanted to read that I really didn't have access to at the time. So there were things like, especially the era when Peter Laird was really taking charge of the Turtles.
Oh, like Volume 4 stuff.
Yeah, volume 4, and volume 4, his kind of solo edition of the TV cartoon, 2003 cartoon. That was like at the top of my list of I wish we'd gone a little bit deeper into that. So we got to expand those sections. I went back and talked to Jim Lawson. I talked to some of the writers and producers on the Four Kids cartoon. So that section's bigger and better. Got to go. And Peter Laird generously provided copious notes on the first edition, so we got to go back and do what I hope will be like the Peter Laird approved gold star uh, complete thumbs up edition, where many of the captions, like for example, he felt like we could have gone into a little more detail
So these were
about
notes he gave after it had been published.
yeah after it had been published. So um, so in some cases, the first edition has things that weren't they were accurate, but he wanted to point out, oh, this is the this is the artist you should mention in this caption, or if you want to be a little more accurate, you can say this. So the captions are better. The Four Kids Volume 4 Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sections are bigger and better. So yeah, that was I absolutely listened to everybody, all the feedback that I got on the first edition, which was everybody's got a favorite era, everybody's got a favorite comic, cartoon, toy, movie, and in some cases, people said, "Yeah, you know what? I wish there'd been a little bit more." Uh,
Sure.
so that was great. So we had, I put in some overtime on that. Sammy Holland, my editor for this go around, she was very supportive of that. She said, "Okay, I can give you this many pages here. I can give you this word count. We're going to do this and adjust the pages as we go." So she was incredibly supportive of doing that, because we wanted to tackle all the new stuff, but I wanted to make sure that we um, all the stuff that kept me up at night about the first edition. I wanted to make sure we addressed that this time
Sure.
around.
And I guess rewinding back when you went the first time around, like what was that experience like? How long did you spend on the book? What was the process you had?
Yeah, that was so much fun. I had written a Looney Tunes history book, the Looney Tunes Treasury, and although it was published by Running Press, I put the whole thing together with the Insight Editions editorial team.
Okay.
So great guy named Kevin Toyama was my editor on that book. But yeah, like ultimately published by Running Press, but it was up until publication, it was an Insight Editions project. So that got my name known around both of those offices. So Chris Prince, who's an Insight Editions editor, sent me an email and said, basically, "Hey, do you know anything about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?" And I said, "Heck yeah!" And so he asked me, "So if you're going to do a pitch," he said, "We've got the Nickelodeon would love to see a book happen now that they've got the rights. We've got the um, it's going to be a lot of work. We're going to have to figure out what this is, but what's your pitch for the complete history of the Turtles?" So I went down my checklist of it all starts with Kevin and Peter, and then you get into the cartoons. So I made my whole list. Like here's what I want to cover. Here's who I want to interview. This is what we need. And Chris and I think both didn't know any better, so we just said, "Yeah, we'll do it. That sounds easy." And got to work on it, and they helped me where they could in tracking people down and setting up some of the uh, some of the interviews. I would say definitely for uh, people in the media side of things. They were not as easy to track down if you
Hmm.
were just a beginning author. So Insight Editions had the resources to help me um, get interviews with people like Brian Henson and
Oh, nice.
Fred Wolf and people that I might not have been able to get otherwise.
Sure.
Um, and initially, the book was we weren't necessarily thinking of the 30th anniversary.
Okay.
We were aiming for the reason for the book was going to be the new Michael Bay produced Turtles movie.
Okay. Yeah, 2014 for sure.
And as I think Turtles fans know, that was kind of a fraught production. It was, um, you know, thing. It was interesting. It was one of the first times I had to deal with the fact that there were these things that were just beyond my control.
Hmm.
Because just like everybody else, I would get I had access to the same news updates where I'd be online, and then I would notice in Variety or Hollywood Reporter, um, hey, this movie just got pushed back 6 whole months,
Sure.
and and then I would fire off an email to Chris and I'd say, what does that mean? Because
Sure. Yeah.
um, though that was we knew that was the last section of the book we would be able to even work on. So in the time since, we've gotten you know a decade later we have better access, and it's not a big deal for um, studios to work with me or me to sign an NDA or something so that I can talk to people while a movie is still in production.
Sure.
At the time, they were, um, they weren't ready to work with us so closely. Like they treated us like just another, um, media outlet basically. So we didn't have great access. They said, they provided, official press photos and movie stills and um, but yeah, we were just kind of biting our nails seeing all these announcements from them, like complete rewrite. This is happening. Movies pushed back. Movies pushed back. This is happening. Um, and that was, that got that kind of pushed things back to the point where we said, oh well, this is kind of a happy accident, but the book's going to be pushed back almost a year, so um, we can spend a little more time on some of these sections. We can go back. We have more time we need it, and we needed that time. We needed that time to find images and assets. Um, but we said, okay, well, it can be a 30th anniversary book, and that will be in time for the new movie. So it all kind of worked out. But this time around, the 40th anniversary, we really, um, it was a ridiculous amount of work.
Hmm.
Still, it was like writing a whole entire book um, in less time. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. I can look back at those earlier sections and again not cringe at the like, oh, I wish we'd had a little more information about this, and I wish I hadn't skipped over this, and I wish we had more images from this. So like everything I wanted to address, everything fans told me they wish I'd addressed in that first section, we got to go back and do.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, very very happy with the final product.
What was it like working with Peter the first go around?
He was he was so incredibly generous with his time. I look back very fondly on that, and it was interesting because we kind of think of Kevin and Peter in terms of Ninja Turtles and like lining up with the characters, even where Peter just comes off as the level-headed, sensible one, and Kevin's the more dive into it, like let's have fun kind of thing. And their interview process was kind of like that too. So Kevin said, "Dude, here's my number. Call me up. We'll talk." And so we just had a fun phone conversation. And Peter said, "I really want to think about what I'm uh, saying. I want time to ponder these questions and do these things." So um, he gave me complete access to him through email. So we just went back and forth and
Mm.
had about a 6 month email conversation where just um, maybe today we would have done that over Facebook Messenger or something to do it more in a more conversational way, but um, that worked out really well. So I would ask a question, he would reply. I would make sure I understood what he was telling me. We'd go back and forth. That would raise new questions. I hope he enjoyed it. I certainly did. Like just this uh, nice long back and forth conversation, and that way he was satisfied with. Um, he knew if I was going to quote him, it's all right there. It's exactly as he put it, and that he had the time to really think on it when he was replying. Like this was my mindset at the time. This is what worked about this project. This is what um, this is the thing that gave me headaches. This was the really fun part. So yeah, that was great.
I'm curious about something. Does the process differ for you in a piece of turtle media where it is not as beloved? So, say like Next Mutation or the 2014 films, because like Rise, even though Turtles Rise has gotten some controversy, there is a distinct fan base for that. So there's a certain you want to honor that because but like for ones that don't seem to have that kind of connection for people, do you feel like you put as much effort into Next Mutation or the Michael Bay movies and things like that? Like what is that, is there any difference in the process for you?
Yeah, I mean, going through the book, um, I can tell, um, and hopefully the reader can't. I can tell when I had a little more love for what I was writing about.
Sure.
So the um, I'm an '80s kid, so the very first issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is probably my favorite of like all the comics. That's probably my favorite
Like what's your
issue just by itself. And um, and so I love that. I love that original, just Kevin and Peter, grinding it out. That whole run, through the early cartoons, the that first wave of Playmates toys, all building up to the first movie coming out. So I had, you know, for me, like getting to interview the people involved in all of that, everybody like Kevin, Peter, Fred Wolf, Brian Henson, Rob Paulson, and Townsend Coleman. Um, like I can tell reading those sections. Okay, I was clearly having a lot of fun talking to them. Uh, but I absolutely did not want anybody who, you know, people who are younger than me, 4 kids was their turtles.
yeah.
There are people who have only seen even the Super Nintendo or the Game Boy under glass in a history museum.
It's so sad.
Uh, so there are kids who have, like, they think of the Turtles as a phone game or as, Xbox kind of thing. And, I did not want anybody to go through and think, oh, well, this guy thinks this, you know, my favorite show was just wasting everybody's time. And it's just
Sure.
this horrible thing. So yeah, next mutation, um, I talked to the writers, I talked to the producers, and I did address any, if there was like strong fan reaction one way or the other, if there was, um, if there's some negativity, if there was something about it that, um, like the absolutely has to be addressed. Like the next mutation had the girl turtle, Venus de Milo. It was the um, short-lived series. It was kind of this turning point in the Turtles' history overall. Um, so I absolutely had to address all of that, but the people who worked on it, like Rhonda Smiley, like the people who wrote scripts for it, and they were sincere. They had fun time. They enjoyed it. Um, when I wrote about uh, Batman for my big Batman history book, uh, talking to Joel Schumacher and
Sure.
Akiva Goldsman, talking to them, you know, they sincerely loved it while they were working on it. They set out to do the best movies they could, and they also, um, they were not shy about pointing out, like, it's kind of impossible to do, uh, this kind of movie with, um, corporate sponsors coming at you from 11 different directions who all have these notes, and then studio people who all have these notes, and the toy company insisting that you have to introduce a new, uh, Batman has to change his costume every 30 seconds so that we can sell, uh,
Right.
another dozen Happy Meals and put more Kenner toys on the shelf. Um, so yeah, I mean, there were a few Turtles projects where, um, the productions were more difficult and complicated than they expected, and the fan reaction to everything is going to be mixed. There were people who um, bought the Mirage comic books who freaked out when they turned it into a Saturday morning cartoon.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
and they're people of a certain age who, um, will, you can go down the list and you could ask people, like, when did Turtles get ruined for you? And they'll have, you know and they'll shoot you a look and they will tell you, well, it was, August 1997 when this
Sure.
happened, and they'll know. But but everything has its fans. There were, sincere, honest efforts from the creative talent who wanted to do their best possible thing, and like whether everybody was on the same page or whether uh, they had limitations that affected what they did or not. Um, but I really wanted to focus. I talk in my introduction about, um, you know, um, you can strike up a conversation with any Turtles fan by asking, what was your introduction
Yeah.
to them, and that's going to lead to a 3-hour conversation with anybody, because you're going to find out, um, like, oh, my mom picked up, this headless, Leonardo figure at a garage sale, and I just fell in love with it, and it was my favorite toy forever. Or um, I saw the commercial for the 1987 TV cartoon, and then my
Sure.
brother and I watched it Christmas break that year. And there's that. They're the people who will tell you they saw the original Associated Press newspaper article and bought the first comic, mail order from Kevin and Peter as soon as it was available. Um,
I know for
People,
me it was I found I was in a department store near where I live, and it was I saw Raphael on the original Raphael toy on the shelf. Like I don't
yeah,
really remember a time before I was a Turtle fan, but I remember that being the first thing was that Raphael figure.
yeah, we could talk about that for days.
Yeah.
Sure. And there are, um, yeah, my son was aware of them, obviously, because there have always been Turtles books and toys and comics around the house. But Mutant Mayhem was the thing that first really clicked for him. So going to see that, um, getting to see a sneak preview screening of that, and it's like, wait, this is fun. This is
It's a really fun movie.
I get it now. I get why you were so excited about these
Yeah.
guys. So yeah, there's uh, so yeah, looping back around. Every Turtles um, project was somebody's first and maybe somebody's favorite. So I wanted that to come through. So I didn't want. There's no chapter in here. If I did my job correctly, there's no chapter in here where you're going to read it and say, "Oh, well, this obviously was a low point and it stunk and everybody hated it." So even last mutation, like I think it comes through how much the people working on it loved it. Rise, I think is a really fun cartoon. There's some really awesome people behind it who had big bold ideas. They wanted to do a Turtles that was very different than anything we'd seen before. Um, their main regret is that their production was cut short in part because of COVID, and in part because of this drastic change in um, toy retail.
Mm.
Honestly, they the reason that we got 5 great seasons, or kind of 4.5 as far as like how the production went, but of the 2012 Nickelodeon cartoon, um, that was bolstered by just phenomenal toy sales. If you remember back when that show was in production, Target practically had a whole aisle that was just dedicated to that show, and Toys R Us was still thriving and also had a very uh, robust Turtles toy selection there. Um, and unfortunately, um, Toys R Us hit this very sharp downturn that coincided with the production on Rise, which meant um, they didn't have the budget, they didn't have the backing, and they just really didn't have um, the same resources available to them that
Mm.
the 2012 production team did. So they, um, their ambitious 2 to 4 season story arc was basically a season and a half with the studio working things out so that they could bring their storyline to a conclusion, but they had to do it uh, again, like a lot of this on the fly at home from home studios due to COVID lockdowns. So that's a big what might have been
Sure. Yeah.
production. Um, and that one, like I know, I remember a conversation with a Turtles comic book artist who, again, was a lifelong fan of the Turtles, and I remember talking to him at the New York Comic Con, and he went out of his way to say, "You seen this new cartoon?" He said, like, it's just not. Said it wasn't for him, and he was talking about Rise. Uh, but I also know some other artists who said, like, have you seen the new cartoon? It's just awesome, and I love the uh, stylized graphics. I love that the turtles are different breeds of turtle. I love all this crazy, uh, 70s Gonzo color palette that they used. Um, and I think, talking to them, talking to um, all the other people through the years, they're pretty confident that once the next one comes along, people will look back at it, and
Oh yeah.
the next one will be the one that fans instinctively complain about as soon as they
Sure.
see the first teaser trailer, and then it's gonna shift. It's gonna be like, I wish they respected Turtles the way Rise did, and the people who complained about Rise are the same, in many cases, the same people who complained about uh, uh, Ciro Neely and the 2012.
There's that
Uh,
extra toe. It's terrible. Meanwhile, it's
yeah,
that series show is phenomenal. So
yeah, and that's true of. I mentioned Batman, and that's true of the Batman movies. Now that we're getting into generational um,
yeah,
Batman movies, and it's true Star Wars. Any long running fandom, um, the kids who grew up with the prequels as their Star Wars are now very defensive and protective of that, and they're insisting to people like us, like, oh no, everybody loved these unconditionally and universally, and this was like the true vision of Star Wars, and like I can't believe this new stuff that's come along, and so you have your millennials, uh, Star Wars splaining, and it's just one of those things. If you have this beloved, long running, um, property that goes through all these different iterations, um, it's not really, if you're being honest, it's not possible that every single one of these is your absolute favorite. You're
yeah,
gonna have some that you like more
sure, of course.
than others, and I think it's really cool that like every single one is going to have its diehard fans, its defenders. So there's probably, um, I'm sure, I'm sure when I go to Comic Con, I'm going to see some awesome sleeve tattoos of Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they will get along just fine with the Venus de Milo cosplayers that I
Sure.
see. Yeah, so that's a great thing.
What was the first go around? Then I'll ask the same thing for revisiting it. But what was the biggest surprise or coolest like find for you the first go around?
First one, yeah, it was, just I think I loved getting to hear, the stories from the very beginning. So just Kevin and Peter, um, and what really jumps out at me about their story is, I think they must have each found like a four-leaf clover and a rabbit's foot and um, every possible good luck charm that they could have ever needed to get through life, because like every um, there are so many points in their history where it was um, the right person in the right place at the right time
Sure.
over
Yeah.
and over again. So them even meeting, it was because they were each, they were both in New England and they had mutual friends who said, "Oh, like you get along great with my friend Peter, who's also a comic book like." And this is like kind of, it seemed like a weird thing in the early '80s, but my friend Peter, who is an adult but also loves comic books, um, and like so them getting together at all in the first place,
Sure.
it's kind of like parents setting up a play date for their kids because um, and sometimes that works out and sometimes it's just like, oh well, you know you're wearing a Super Mario t-shirt, you're wearing a Sonic the Hedgehog t-shirt, you two should be friends. We're gonna put you in a sandbox and see if you get along. And sometimes that person becomes your best friend. Sometimes it's just like, why are we here? Like, why did this happen? But like friends arrange for them to get together. Um, so that's luck number one. And then like they hit it off. They said like, why don't we're both trying to do kind of the same um, commercial art thing. Let's give this a shot as business partners. Um, that divine inspiration that they were, kind of blowing off work and goofing around by drawing turtles on paper that one night. Um, we're very lucky that happened. If um, if they hadn't seen the potential there, if Kevin's uncle, who gave them a business loan to print that first Turtles comic, if he hadn't been on board with that, if they hadn't uh, sent out if they hadn't typed up a professional press release and sent it out to the Associated Press, if it hadn't been that slow news weekend where they ran that article,
Yeah.
uh, if they hadn't met Mark Friedman when he was this young, hungry licensing guy who wanted this project that wanted this property that he could make his own, um, and just on down the line, like they met all the right people at exactly um, the right time in there. Like it's just one of those days where you're driving down the road and you just get like all the lights turn green
Yeah.
exactly as you're approaching them, and um, you get to where you're going, and you're either the first person in line or the very last person in line who gets the last thing you wanted off the shelf, whatever. Like they had um, just this incredible good fortune, and so many times on the way, if they'd made this slightly different decision, if Peter or Kevin had said like, yeah, I'm not going to get along with some guy just because we both like Jack Kirby comics. I don't have time to meet this guy because I'm gonna go see Raiders of the Lost Ark again at the theater, and like just tell him I couldn't make it, and that could have been it. Um, so there were cool things like that. There were so many fun interviews for the first book. Um, and so many great people I got to meet. So I'm just really um, really fortunate. Like for me that all right place at the right time. I was very fortunate that uh, Chris Prince reached out to me about writing this, and that um, I was able to talk the talk and convince him that this would be a good fit. And now I've been a Turtles official Turtles guy for a decade now.
Cool. What about the new one? What's a highlight from diving back in and revisiting the history and checking out these new parts?
Yeah, so it's at this point, again, like I've got a 10-year history with the Turtles now. So there was the opportunity to reconnect with people who at this point are old friends.
Hmm.
So people I talked to for the first book, in some cases, um, Kevin Eastman and Tom Waltz and Townsend Coleman. There were people I got to go back around and talk to them again. Um, I built up the Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle and Volume 4 sections. So I got to go back around and talk to um, people like Jim Lawson again. That was really nice, reconnecting with people. Um, the biggest thing people asked for after the first book was, they said like we saw there's some photos, there's some mention of the arcade games, but we really wanted, like, so many people asked about doing a video game section.
Sure. Yeah.
So that was at the top of my list this time around was, who can I talk to about video games? And I really wasn't sure at the outset of this because I thought, okay, I know, Konami is there and I know that they are, a Japanese company, and I don't know what did the American side of this do? What was this like? What did this take to make these games happen? Um, but Mark Friedman, again, the thoughts of Surge Licensing, the reason that everybody on Earth has heard of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I reached out to him and he said, you've got to talk to Emil Heidkamp, who was in charge of the American division of Konami in the mid 1980s, and he's the one who made this happen. And I talked to him and had an amazing conversation about Top Gun and Konami and Ultra Games, and really got the inside track on, um, how this happened, how um, he really had the vision and drive to uh, bring Turtles to home uh, video game consoles, and how that led to and I can tell from the background here, I can tell you're a fan of the arcade games. So he
Oh
had,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
um, so he had that vision and he made it happen, and that was um, really exciting for me to get that story. And like I almost felt like I've got to I've got to do 15 more hours of interview with that guy so that I can really get all of his stories about Konami and about, um, my era of video games when the people thought home consoles were dead, and then the NES came to the U.S. and suddenly that exploded. That turned from this, you know, who want like Atari was kind of just this rapidly fading um, um, thing at that point. They had their brief little blip, as far as having cultural impact, but there are articles, as the NES was coming out where people were skeptical, like business industry people, toy people were all skeptical that like, this would ever happen, and they um, you know we've already proven that kids don't want home video game systems, and this is not going to work. And I don't know why they think taking this character from Donkey Kong and like giving him a game of his own is going to work. And um, so I've seen, um, in science fiction magazine, like my wife has a science fiction magazine from around that time that's just talking about what a terrible idea
I love it.
this thing is going to be, and what family is going to spend $100 to bring this thing home, and it'll never last. So, but talking to again Emil Heidkamp, and like how he was in the market for a martial arts fighting game, and he had just had phenomenal success with branding a flight simulator game as Top Gun. And so again, right person at the right place at the right time, where he was looking for, um, let's find a way to license something and turn it into this cool at home game, and that obviously sold just this completely ridiculous off the charts number of copies in the 80s, and then that led to the massively successful arcade uh, franchise. So just yeah, so we got to go into depth with that. We talked to the I talked to the production team behind the Cowabunga collection for Konami, which amazing archive where you've got either 13 or 14 um, video games that were produced for all these different consoles, all on one system. So that is, yeah, just very, very exciting talking to people who are passionate about video games. And that chapter was just a blast, that I got to pull out my old they're still in working order. I've still got my NES and my Super Nintendo.
Yeah, you can
And
never talk about any of them.
that was, I got to sit at home and play video games and tell everybody, like, leave me alone. I'm working, I'm doing research.
Sure.
I still can't get very far at all in that in the original.
That game is so hard. Like, I know it's famously it's so terrible. Like, it's so hard to get through, but like it's.
Kevin Eastman and I talked about that. We talked about like
Yeah.
that water level, and it's like it's terrible. And
Oh, so bad. I do appreciate.
we didn't have neither of us had that drive to get like past past
Yeah.
that part. And
Because I'm terrible at every video game. I like them, but I'm not very good at any of them. And that game, like, I even used like Game Genie and stuff like that when I was a kid. And I could never quite get past that. It was terrible.
the genius of the reason that the arcade game, and it was the top arcade game 2 years in a row, which is may have been unprecedented. That's incredibly rare for something where kids are always looking for what's new and exciting. And the fact that they came back to Turtles 2 years in a row is around 90-91, when people are just peak Turtle mania happening. But the genius of that arcade game is it's designed for 4 players. It encourages 4 players, so it's twice as big as any other arcade cabinet. So it has this massive footprint. It's playing the theme song. It's got this awesome, unescapable, video intro that just kind of lures you in. And the skill level is really, if you can push a button, you can play it. If you can.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And as long as you've got enough quarters, and you can physically press the button and punch things,
yeah,
you will beat the game. Like, if it's, most of us were in about the $5 skill level. If you had $5, if one of your friends had $5, that was about enough for you to get through the game. If you were younger and didn't have the hand-eye coordination, maybe $10 max. But if you have the patience, you will get through and you'll beat the game. And that was the genius of it, is if about $5, you spend an hour there, your parents get a 1 hour break from you while they are um, going to the other stores in the mall that they have to visit. Um, but you have like an afternoon. You're just doing that. You get that feeling of accomplishment because you just play straight through. You actually beat an arcade game, which if you think back to the classic arcade games like Pac-Man and Centipede, Space Invaders, Galaga, Tetris, those don't have an ending. You just play until it gets too fast. Play until it gets too
Oh,
fast.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Donkey Kong, like you play, it gets faster, it gets more challenging, and eventually you get tired out or it just gets too fast for you to keep up.
Sure.
Uh, so a game that you could play start to finish, like Turtles, that was genius, and
Yeah.
that kept people
Rewarding.
coming back after if you beat it 1 week and then you're back at that same mall the next week, you just think, oh, that was fun. We can do that again. And
You play as a different turtle. You can do all those things. Like
yeah,
you could.
and then other games with that very successful formula came along, like X-Men, Simpsons.
Sure.
Uh, pick a character, four of you, each play a different character. Um, you play through $5. You play through start to finish. Your your parents get to hang out at the food court or buy jeans or whatever they have to do. Um, and yeah, it was just kind of that golden era of explaining to kids who are playing online with their friends who are in another city, another state, um, who have like this awesome widescreen home setup, explaining to them like, no, you had to. This is destination. You went there. You
Yeah.
had a fun day doing that. Um, you didn't have this at home yet, or the version you had at home was a little different. Um, and yeah, so I hope my enthusiasm for the video games comes through. It definitely came through from the people who worked on those
Hmm.
games at the again the Cowabunga collection people who um, were so excited about bringing that together as a package. The people at Tribute Games who did the Shredder's Revenge side scroller
A great game. Yeah.
game that's like a full of all these callbacks to the original arcade game and the 80s cartoon. Um, yeah, and like again, every single um, I don't think like in the entire book, I don't think I talked to anybody who um, just saw this as a paycheck. Like
Hmm.
nobody who got involved, and certainly after the Turtles had really established themselves, um, nobody who came on board for this said, "Oh, it was just okay." This I approached this the same as if um, as any other video game animation live action movie project. Everybody had some even people who were a little skeptical at the beginning, like came around and were very enthusiastic about the characters and about the property by the end of it.
Um. I wanted to ask you. So the book comes out July 23rd. This episode's going to be hitting July 22nd, so it should be the very next day. Where's the best place for people to get it?
Okay. Any of your favorite online retailers should have it. So the really big uh, stores, but you can find links at the Inside Editions website. Simon and Schuster should have information about it. So any of your favorite online retailers that sell books will have it. Hopefully it'll show up at your local bookstores. I would love it if people uh, ask their comic shop to order it. So local comic shop. I am, I'm going to be doing, uh, signings here in Northern California, San Diego Comic-Con. But hopefully I'll be traveling around and going to conventions. Absolutely ask your local convention organizers to bring out, um, especially if you have a big convention around you, there is about 150% chance that Kevin Eastman already has plans to be there. So if you see his name, if you see his name in the lineup, fire off a note to that convention and say, bring out the guy who wrote the Turtles history book. I'm hoping to do like a few panels and convention appearances with him and other Turtles people throughout the year. So we're already looking at our calendar as far
Kevin,
as that goes.
he did the new cover, right? Which looks beautiful.
Yeah. This was so cool. Yeah, the first book had a different cover, and that I was talking to Ryan Brown, who actually lives near my hometown. So uh, we still have to meet up in person. We haven't done that yet, but he and I were talking, and like I told him about my idea for the cover for the first for that first edition. And I said, well, we want to riff on the original Turtles comic book cover, and got four turtles. We can cover four different eras of the Turtles, and I said we want, um, and I actually changed the lineup a little bit because I wanted to make sure that um, the original Turtles all had red bandanas on those Mirage covers. Uh, so all four of them were red. So I said we have to have the oldest turtle, the old school turtle wearing red. So we need to put Raphael on the far end,
Sure.
um, just to make sure that he's in red. So let's do that. And we have to have the newest turtle, which at that point was from the 2012 Nickelodeon animated series. And I said, well, Donatello's the most immediately recognizable from that show because he's got the gap in his teeth, and I
Sure.
love that character design. So we have to put him on the far end. We have to have goofy 1987 party guy Michelangelo with a slice of pizza. Um, so I actually, I kind of art directed that, and Ryan Brown said, yeah, I'll draw that. And he said, wait, let me make a call. And he checked in with Kevin, and he got Kevin to ink it. So that was uh, this very cool Mirage reunion there. So Kevin and Ryan doing the cover um, that was amazing. And then Sammy Holland, my editor for this edition, said, "Okay, yeah, we're talking to Kevin. I think he's on board for a new cover." And and she asked if I had any suggestions. I said, like if he seemed to have a very strong idea from the beginning. So I said, just surprise me. And so he did this amazing full color um, cover, and it's amazing. Like it just jumps out
Yeah, it's
at
beautiful.
you. It's this beautiful, all the turtles, all their friends, all their foes on the cover. Um, and to me, it just immediately uh, it reminded me of the Turtles role playing guide from the
Oh yeah, it does look like that. Totally true. Yeah.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness. So it had that same kind of palette, same energy. So I thought that's perfect because it's bright and colorful for Um, just to kind of be this eye-catching thing. The original cover had a lot of black on it, which again was also very visually striking.
Sure.
But this, yeah, again, there's no confusing this cover for the other one, so that's great.
Mm.
And again, it um, has that new energy, but it also has that throwback
Yeah, there's a
vibe.
Mirage feel to it as well, which is very
Yeah,
cool. Yeah,
yeah. So I was knocked out when I got that. I think, yeah, Sammy showed that to me on her smartphone. I remember when we
that's so cool.
uh, when we got to meet in person and talk about it. She said, "Oh wait, bam, here's the cover."
That's great.
Yeah.
My last question. My last question for you is, and I ask this of everybody, is who's your favorite turtle and why?
Yeah, I'm still, yeah, it's, and they say it's like picking favorite child, but like I don't really hesitate to say it's Donatello.
Okay.
And um you know personality wise, like everybody, um and the cartoon really gave them those very clearly defined
Absolutely.
personalities, and um just kind of, you instantly, like, and it's spelled out in the theme song, like you just immediately know who's who. You have this sense of who they are, how they act, and and us, those of us who were like very good, very responsible students, I think gravitated toward Donatello, just being like, oh, he's the science guy. He's the guy who obviously um, has a really big comic book collection in his corner of the
Sure.
his corner of the room. Like, he's probably got D&D miniatures that he's painting. Reads Scientific American. Um, so like he was just this character that I just really liked. I really clicked with him. Um, and and also, also he's pretty much always the best character in the video games too, because
Yeah.
the bow staff has the um, it's not the most powerful technically, but it's got the most reach.
Yeah. Especially that first
Uh,
one.
so that's like, I don't want to say it's a design flaw, but um, it gives you such an advantage when you're playing that game, playing the arcade game and other games, that you get that extra reach. There's always kind of a fight for like who's going to get that purple uh, button when you're playing when you're all racing to the arcade console. Um, but yeah, so I've always had a fondness for him, and like I mentioned, the 2012 animated version of him, where he had that little gap in his teeth, that was very endearing. And yeah, so I always kind of gravitate toward him. Although I've had, um, I like all the characters so much, and just um, they're brothers. So you really, they're a complete package. And um, you really get to, and it's like, it's like my own. I've got three brothers myself, so um, you get to appreciate those different aspects of each of them. And like, anytime the four of us are together, especially because I've spent so much time with the turtles, like I do occasionally think about that with them, like which roles we kind of all fill. Like, if we're planning a road trip or something, like who's going to take charge, who's going to be who do you want in charge of the radio, who do you trust to pick out the best restaurant for us to stop at, who are you going to stick with the bill when
Sure.
um, so yeah. And I think anybody who has siblings, anybody who has groups of friends, I think they all think about that.
I'm all set here, man. Thanks so much for your time. Again, everybody, that comes out July 23rd, 2024. I'm going to include the link for Inside Editions page on the description of this episode, but you can find it anywhere, especially your local comic shop. And again, it's the first go around. The book is beautiful, and it's even better now. So thanks for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. And thanks for putting all the work in, because this kind of stuff to preserve the history of this franchise is super important. So thank you.
Yeah, glad to do it, and yeah, so much fun talking to you.
Same here.